All right, so as I was saying, g'day and welcome. So we're just going to run through all the timing software and hardware tonight. And just to give us a bit of an overview of what that's all about, we just got a little slide. You may have already downloaded the pack and had a look, but just a bit of a refresher in case it's been 6 months and can't quite remember all the dots and how they join up. So traditionally, all the registrations come in from IMG, so Clubs Online, IMG, STG Sport. That's where it comes across into RaceHQ. In RaceHQ, that's where you set up your program with your age, gender, events, and all your athletes in there. Someone else joining in. Just see if Mark's going to pop on up. So once they're in here, the timing software, which runs on Windows, will then allow you to bring down your athletes, the PBs, events, results, and so on. The events. Then you go and add results against that and push that back up to RaceHQ. And the moment you push it up, unless you turn a particular setting on, you will then be pushing results out to the family and the kids. Meanwhile, if you're using a particular scenario where you need to use high-tech Meet Manager, then there is an interface between the timing software and Meet Manager, which will let you bring across the start list and who's in what lane, and then push back times against that to allow high-tech Meet Manager to run in full carnival mode with you. Any questions on this so far? No? Okay, so we'll just keep pushing on. So what we're just going to have a bit of a go at first is just an overview of the timing options that the new software has available. So I'm just going to go and open this up to begin with. Let's just pull this down. So here's the new 3 series timing application. It's a bit of a background on this. Why is it the 3 series instead of the 2 series? What does that even mean? The start here, it says V3 dot whatever number we're up to at that point in time. So that's how you know it's the 3 series. The 2 series has a 2 dot something or other after it. The 3 series has this little intro at the start. There's a skip button down here if you need to, but otherwise it just scrolls through. So if you haven't already downloaded it, this is what it goes through to try and help new people get a better feel for what all the moving parts of the application are, why you need to do them, and what it's trying to tell you to do at different points. So we can just let it go through. If you ever need to go back, just click on one of the little dots down the bottom here and you can manually control where it's up to. So if you've got someone new that's about to help you out, this can be a handy thing to get them introduced to the system. And then it will time out eventually, or you can just go skip. So as it said, here's all our timing apps. So the background on this application, traditionally we had around 4 or 5 different applications for different reasons, which meant obviously lots of places we had to keep updating different bits of code. So if we find a bug in application X, we had to go and remember to go and put it in Y and Z and make sure then that they're all happy. Versus now we've got it all in one application. It's much more efficient for us to do that. Plus then it means you only have one place to go to do anything with our timing instead of 3 or 4 different locations to grab different apps for different reasons. And so all the apps are available in this little drop-down list here. So if you're using the Tassie gates or ATP systems from Tasmania, the metal structure with the cables and so on, there's 2 variations of that application based on the firmware in your timing box. If you're using a photo finish, being Finish Links or Swiss Amiga, or even the Quantum for your swimming pool, as in the touchpads, and that will allow you to read those files. If you're in Victoria and some other states where they're getting more into printing bibs and barcodes, then that's where you go and do that. Start line's a cool little application. If you're ever doing a handicap or a wave start type event, then this gives you a kind of like a Tour de France timing house with the countdown and the athlete's name and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, beep, and then they go, and then it brings up the next athlete and so on. Saved events, that's your best friend throughout the season. That's where you go and look at all your events to edit and re-upload anything that you need to. That also lets you network computer A to computer B. So if you want to have one computer doing all your timing, and your second computer doing all your recording of who was in which lane, then that's where saved events via a network cable or a wireless network that you set up would allow you to mirror information across on the second computer and go and complete the data set by putting in who was in that lane or who was in that place. Acceleration, if you've got the wireless timing gates, then you can actually set them up for 5, 10, 20 meter splits as you're going. So if you're a bit of a speed coach, or you've got some sort of talent coach within your environment, then that may be handy for them. Swimming, if you're using little wireless timing bits and pieces, then that's what that's about. RFID, obviously cross country and is a big one. Also, some people are starting to look at this for 8s and 1500s, particularly the 1500s if you're on a smaller oval. It'll give you lap counts and lap splits and all that jazz. Pack, that's your normal manual timing, just like if you're using a Seiko multi-timer. And then sprints, which is to work with the timing gate. So that's the main focus tonight, as far as I'm aware. Is everyone comfortable with that? Is there any, if you're not comfortable, or if you've got any questions, just please unmute your mic and jump in now and just hit us while we're fresh.
The timing gates is good. Thanks, Nick.
No worries, thank you. So on the timing gate front, this application, traditionally you would, someone's got their mic on still. There we go. Traditionally, we would have the setup screen, which wasn't very graphical, so it didn't really help you know what you were trying to do, apart from some arrows and some bubbles. So we've tried to make this a bit easier for the layman to jump on, try and understand what the arrow bases and the sun's all about. So in case anyone, it's kind of funny, I've had some centres using the gates for a couple of seasons now, and they always thought the arrows were just to the side of the track that you're sitting on. Which luckily for them worked well. The background for the gates and the arrows and the sun, you may remember looking at your gate, and at one side of the gate there's a round circle, and that's where you also have your red on off button. On the other side of that same gate there's an oblong type hole in the back that's kind of got a shadow within it. So one side is the sender, being the LED side, which is the side that has the arrows, but the back side of that gate where that oval hole is, that's the eye. So that's actually trying to look for the gate across the way, which is sending its LED pulses, and that's how it knows if someone cuts through. So just like your eyes don't like looking at the sun, you got to squint or even close your eyes in worst case scenario. That's the same with the gates. They've got their own little pupil that will adjust based on the level of light or the intensity of light that's in its environment. So you always want to have the arrows pointing to the sunniest side of the track. And that's the reason why it becomes more of a challenge with these gates versus, say, with the ATP system and so on, is because they are not mechanically held together and they're built to go on grass as well as your nice synthetic tracks. We had to allow the gates to have a wider aperture, so a wider view angle of the gate that it's looking for, which means we've got to make a bigger hole to make sure that if the gates are on a bit of a snaky, grassy, wobbly area, that they can still see the other gate, which means we also let more light in. So if there is more background light, as in the sun, then that's why it's best to have the arrows pointing to the sunniest side, so we know that regardless of how good a sunny day it is, at least the eyes have their back to the sun, or as close as they can, and then that will allow them to not have to squint and not give you phantom times, which is one of the main outcomes from having the gates pointing the wrong direction as far as to the sunniest side. So classic question is, what if I'm doing a full day carnival? Does that mean at lunch I switch them around? And so possibly, depending on the orientation of your track. And the best indication of that is how big a shadow your gates are throwing and what direction the shadows are going. And your final indication is if you start getting phantom times, meaning no one running through the gate, but you're getting some times appearing, then that's a really good indicator that your gates are squinting really hard. They're squinting so hard that they think they may have seen someone run through. That's the point in time at which you go and come back into here, flip the arrow, so click on the other sun, turn all your gates 180, so now the sun is at the back of the eyes, so the arrows to the sunniest side, and then hit go race again. So you don't have to turn everything off or reset anything. Just flip the arrow, turn the gates on the track 180, just like the diagram is shown, and then you're good to go again. Does that help explain what the sun and the arrows are all about? Is there any questions relating to that?
Yes, I have one.
Yep.
If we have phantom times at night,
Yep.
like we run our competitions at night, and we were getting phantom times.
Mm-hmm. Okay, there's a couple possible reasons. One, depending on what sort of lights and the angle of the floodlights hitting your oval. So that's one scenario. The other scenario is the gates have 4 beams, but if only the bottom beam gets cut, it waits 1 second and then it gives you a time, but it also gives a little asterisk on that time and puts a little 1 beam indicator, meaning a little icon with 1 red being the bottom line and 3 greens above, which is, we've seen it quite a few tracks. If they've got moths and that sort of thing hanging around, then that can be setting off the bottom beam. So it just depends on what you're seeing. And
no, they're just phantom time.
Yep. So that'd be your 2 scenarios. So again, you don't have a physical sun, but you've got some good floodlights there by the sounds of it. So maybe just experiment with that and see.
Yeah.
Have a look at the shadows that the lights are throwing on the gates, and then find your sunniest side and adjust it accordingly.
Right. Great.
And
thank you.
Also the insect. It may sound crazy, but I've seen it a number of times, and so keep that in mind if you do get that 1 beam indicator happening. Good question. Any other questions? Okay, so that's basically what this screen's about. There are some little things on here. I can turn this on, which allows me to see if I'm setting up by myself and I really want to see what these dots are doing. I'll turn them on soon, then we can talk through what they actually do. Then I can turn that on, otherwise leave them off. I've set up for tonight, because I'm tethered to the laptop. I haven't got too many gates set up. I've got 3 lanes worth, hence I've set this up as 3. We can push this all the way out to the maximum being 14. And a wide, long scrolly bar. That's a long setup doing those. There is a club that has that many. And even if I wanted to start from lane 2, because I'm leaving lane 1 open for all my 800s that are happening. So that's what that combination's about. I'm going to run all 3 lanes. So I'm just going to start turning on my gates unless there's any other questions. So I'm just turning the first one on. I'm not sure if you can question.
Just quickly there, it's Peter here. When you have lane 2 as the start lane, you don't physically actually have a gate pole in lane 1, right?
Up to you. So you could do. So the traditional way of opening up for 800s is to actually have 1 and 2 empty. But in this scenario, if I was going to start from lane 2, then that inside gate, the one on that inside border of my track, in theory isn't in the way. So I could just leave it there, or I could roll it out of the way if I wanted some space.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. So my first gate's on, it's got a green tick. It's telling me then, please go turn the next one on. It's even got a little description up here, connect the unit on the outside of lane 1. So go and turn it on. If this arrow was the wrong way, then that would come up red. And normally, because I've manually told it to go that way, normally if that was the first time I turned it on, it would see red, wait a couple seconds, and it would automatically flip back. So you don't always have to have the arrow the right way on the software. In theory, if you take your time, you don't just sprint through and turn on all your gates, then this first one is critical. That's when it sets up that you do have it the right direction. And if I didn't have it the right direction and I flew down the line turning on all these gates, then I'm in a pickle and I haven't paid attention to my first gate, so the rest of them are all going to be out of whack. So secret to set up, take your time. And this here is a really cool little trick. You may have already done this. You go and walk through the gate and you get your reds as you cut through the beams. But a really cool way, instead of me having to have this turned on and be able to see the screen, particularly if I've got a wide track or it's sunny and I can't see the screen and the glare and all the rest of it. So instead of having that on or have someone call back to me, a good little trick is if you start from the top, I'm just going to run my hand down. That's the top beam, next, and then I'll be quiet. You may have heard that beep. I'll get a bit closer in case it's a bit hard to hear on the mic. You'll notice I get only one beep, and that's after around a second I've cut that bottom beam. That's good. I want to hear one beep, and I only want to hear it after a second after that last beam. So if I just do that last beam again, that's our little Ewok finder for the little kids, the little tiny tots. If only the bottom beam gets cut and nothing else for a second, it then triggers a time relative to a second ago when I cut the beam. But this also tells me that my beams are all good without having to look at the gates. If I do this, and only the beep a second after I've finished running my hand down, that's good. It means I don't have something like this happening, where I've got one bad beam for whatever reason. There's a moth, there's some mud, there's something or other. Because otherwise, if I had this and I start running my hand, the moment I cut that first beam, I'm getting a trigger. So that tells me straight away, because it needs 2 adjacent beams as a minimum to trigger a time. So it tells me if I'm only physically cutting one beam but I'm getting a trigger, obviously unless I'm on the bottom beam, then it tells me there's an issue with this gate. One of my beams has a blockage, has a cobweb, has something on the inside there that's causing it to not see properly. So again, if I cover one beam manually because I'm trying to create an issue here, and I only cut the top beam and I get a beep straight away, or the next one, then that tells me my middle beam is the issue because there have to be 2 adjacent beams. If I cover the top one and cover the third one, I don't get a time. Or the bottom one, that gives me my little delay, but this one here will be straight away. So key to setup, one hand, run it down the gate slowly, wait a second, and you should hear that beep. If you hear that, then 99% of the time, you know that gate is hunky-dory and you're ready to go turn the next gate on. Everyone's cool with that? You could hear the beeps as I'm trying to describe what I'm hearing. I'm assuming you can hear that too.
Yeah, clear as bell.
Good. So now that I've set up lane 1, it's happy. I go and turn on lane 2. And again, wait for that second beep. That second beep, you may have noticed already, means that this is now connected. And as all the gates and all the hardware, they've got a 2-way transmitter receiver, or a transceiver they're called. It gives you your battery, reception and so on in the gate. If it's ever yellow, a gate, mouse over it and it'll tell you why. Normally that would be the battery or reception or alignment, but alignment will be yellow with a red X, and we'll go through that one as well. So again, run my hand down gently. So I'm just cutting it through the air. I'm not actually running my hand on the gate. I'm just running it in front of the gate as I come through. I'm going to do it while I'm paying attention to where my hand is. And then I turn my next gate on. So one of the kind of traps here is that some people have lots of eager volunteers, which is awesome, but they may run ahead and turn gates on out of sequence, or they turn them on in sequence, but they're not actually paying attention and they've kind of covered up some issue with the gate. Now, there shouldn't be any issues with the gates, but this is the time you want to know about it, not once you start racing and get underway. So I just turn the last gate on. I grabbed a gate without batteries, it seems. I'll just grab another gate, just hold on. Okay, I'm back. So that's that gate. And that's now, again, I run my hand through. So that's covering off those gates. Now, if I needed to change a gate out, all I need to do is just hit this little bin. Are you sure? Yes. They're gone. Turn it back on. And it's back in the lineup again. If I wanted to reset all my gates for whatever reason, then hit this, and it means I have to go and turn all these back on again. If I'm not sure which gate is which, because we've just finished with doing this, lane 2 was turned off and lane 1 is now joining the ranks. If I've kind of gotten a bit muddled and I'm not sure which gate is actually supposed to be in which position, if you give it a quick press, it tells you which one in theory you've just pressed. So I've just pressed this one on my lineup in the picture, and that matches my physical world, so I know that I've got the right gate in the right position. The outcome, if I didn't have it in the right position, means we may get lane 2 times happening in lane 1 and vice versa. The last part of the puzzle here is now turning on my start device. Just waiting for that to hook up. So you've got one of the old original start devices, the black ones here. Now this new software that we've got, if there's ever any of this hardware that has a firmware that needs to be updated, it will flag it for you and it'll let you update that firmware while you're on the screen itself. So you won't have to go and download another application and go through some other steps. You just, if you have time, that is, you don't want to do it just before a big meet. Just run with what you got and then do it later on. You never know what can happen with doing firmware updates. It's bad when it happens, but if it does happen, it can cause you a bit of a delay if things need to be reset and so on. So only do that if you've got time and you're not in a stressful environment. Otherwise, just run with what you got. If it's been going well, then keep going until you get time to switch it out. So that's now our devices. In case you weren't aware with these things, you can drag and drop it. So I want it to be a trigger. I want it to be a start device. There's 2 spots here. So if I had 2 start devices, then this would allow me to start, say, some clubs do this, believe it or not. They've got a 200-meter start device and they've got a 400-meter start device and they're running overlapping races. So they kick the 200s off, then they kick the 400s off shortly after. Obviously the 200s will come home quicker than the 400s, so everyone comes through. They stop the race for the 200s, meanwhile the 400s are coming through, and so on. So that's why there's 2 there, in case you wonder what that's about. So I don't need anything else on this screen. I've got my gates on, they're all green and happy. I've got my start device on, green and happy. Now common rookie error is that people don't turn the start device on here. Got a question?
Yeah, just wondered, while we're on the screen, in the event that you did transpose 2 of the gates when you were putting them back, say, after a middle distance race,
yep,
would it not flag up that there was a problem?
It doesn't know which one's supposed to be where, because it doesn't know, it doesn't have a GPS locator to say that, no, you're a meter to the left of where you should be. It just knows that it's seeing beams and it's happy with that.
Okay.
So it's still up to the operator to, if you're not sure, go and give it a press and it'll say, oh yeah, cool, that's the inside of lane 1. That matches with what I'm assuming it should be.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. Good question though. So a little rookie error is people forget about the start devices. It's all about the gates right now. And they go, sweet, gates are on, let's go run a race. But meanwhile, they haven't turned their start device on, which means they won't be getting a start when they get through to the race screen, which we'll go to now, because it's not a part of the family. It's not hooked up. It's not a part of the lineup of hardware that we're trying to communicate with. Now, difference between the original 2 series and this 3 series, if anyone's familiar with the 2, you used to have little tick boxes as you went from setup through to race. And what those tick boxes used to do was to go and find a quiet channel, tell each gate we're changing from channel X to channel 10, and everyone comes back, yep, got it, channel 10, channel 10, channel 10, and then it goes and confirms. That's where we used to have the issues with some gates wouldn't be picking that up for some reason, will be left outside the circle. So you then had to go back to setup, reconnect all the bits, as in let them find the laptop again, and then come back through. So we've removed the need for that, so that obviously it just makes it a bit more robust out there in the field. Now, if I did have to go back to setup, I just click on this setup icon, and we're back there again. Just give it a sec for that to dial back in. And then when we're ready to, we can just go race again. This little bit down here was there briefly, said gate synchronizing. There's a good one. This here is what happens occasionally. You'll get that pop up. So it couldn't actually see the gate. It was still trying to find that gate. Hence it gave us a little yellow with a red cross and 4 little red dots. I'll give you an example of what that's about. I'm covering now the bottom beam on lane 3, and after a couple seconds it'll go red like that and start to show me that I've got some issues with my beams on this gate because I'm now covering them. So it didn't used to have these little dots, it just used to go yellow and red, so you didn't know what you're actually looking for. And now when we remove my hand, it goes green again. If I go cover another lane, you can hear that one beam go off. And then it should pick up that I'm covering that beam. Oh, this one's happy. If I do that, there we go. And again, it'll flag it and tell me which ones I'm covering. So that's just a bit of a helper when you're in the field to go, why is this gate not aligned? When I can see that they're lined up in a straight line, it's to try and help you identify which beams are actually the ones that are causing grief. And if it's one of the beams, go and have a look, and maybe there's a moth or a spider web or something in there that's causing an issue. So it's telling you where to go look. If we're in this screen and we wanted to turn a lane off so I don't get times, I'm not physically touching the gate, I'm just turning it off so I won't get a time out of lane 1, then I go and untick it here. Then if I wanted to use it again, I'd just go and tick it and we'll be back on again. So just tick it back on again. You can see down here, it's giving me some descriptions. Gates are not yet ready, please wait. Still gives us the start button. So if we need to use the start button, we can. It's about to do a realignment process. And then when we're ready to, we can go start a race. Now this red one, saying connection is lost. So I'm giving you all the good ones tonight. Let's back up. So I pulled some gates out of the pile that I need to service. So we're starting to see why I need to give them a service for some reason. This is perfect to show you problem solving and fixing on the fly. So one of my little tricks, if I ever see something like this, go and untick it and tick it back on. And then that normally fixes it. And I'm ready to go run races again. So this lane is now good. That one's good. That one's good. So that's my go-to question.
Yeah, Nick, we had the other night one lane just keep going red, so it'd be green, nothing would change, and then we'd start the race, and then halfway through the race the lane or the gate would go red.
Yep.
The athlete would run through the lane and it would record a time even though it was red.
Yep. That's to be expected.
It would go green again.
Yep.
For a period of time, and then again maybe the next race it would go red. It was just one lane that was doing it.
Okay.
And then an athlete would run through it and there'd be no result recorded, and it was a little bit hit and miss. Right. And so we ended up swapping one of the poles out.
Yep.
But then again I marked it and we tried it again on the weekend and it worked without a problem. So
okay, well what the red means is the gates need to talk to the timing hub, and if the timing hub can't get a response from the gate after 10 attempts, it then flags it and tells you that, hey, I can't talk to it. But what that normally means is the moment the gate gets a time, it then checks in with the laptop, clears the red status because it can talk to it. It's just given a time over. So I wouldn't normally expect red to be a genuine issue unless the gate had actually died, as in the power had totally gone, or we've got some major comms challenges due to the environment that we're in, as far as the antenna direction or that sort of thing. So did you, the second time around, did you have the antenna positioned anywhere different than the first time?
The second time around we were at different tracks. So we were at SOPAC the first time, and then last weekend I had that gate out and we had them running for about 2 hours yesterday, and they worked without a problem. So and that was at Narrabeen.
That's your local ground, is it, the Narrabeen track?
Yeah, Narrabeen.
Okay, so that's what red means. So classic red moment is if the start device is over at the 200, being the worst case environment where it's all the way over there, and the starter puts a gun on the ground because they're pulling out caps or they're answering a phone or doing something. Now we've got a situation where the start device is at its furthest point, plus it's on the ground, and the closer something is to the ground, the worse the reception is. I would then expect to see a red up here in the start device. That start device being red is fine, because the moment the starter picks it up and gets back getting ready to start, particularly when they pull it up and get it ready in the air, then I would expect that to go green again. And a good fun test to do is if you get your phone or your stopwatch, you take the antenna off your timing hub, so you're purposely trying to kill the reception. Take your start device across the other side of the oval to really hurt the reception. Start your stopwatch and pull the trigger on your gun at the same time. Wait 10 seconds and start walking back towards where the reception is. This laptop time will then catch up to the reality of 15 seconds, wherever you're up to at that point in time, and let you continue on. So that's red is just an alert to say I can't talk to it, but it's not that, in theory, it's not that you have a fatal error with that gate unless it's physically died from no power. So in your SOPAC environment, if it's red, that would normally tell me that there's some sort of lots of comms challenges in the area. So one of the classic stories with this was that at Cherrybrook, they've got a big open oval that used to be on reclaimed old tip or rubbish landfill area. And they've got 3 different tracks. Their middle track was 8 lanes, or is 8 lanes. And every time they got to setting up lane 5, 6, 7, 8, the gates would just drop reception, and it didn't matter which gate they put in there, they had an issue. As soon as they moved the track 4 lanes to the good side of the oval, so they added an extra 4 lanes on because they had that luxury, those gates set up fine now. But it's like there's a UFO buried under the ground in the other part of the oval where it just really hurts the reception for some bizarre reason. So there's all sorts of potential environmental challenges that can create issues, which needs a little bit of time to identify. So Cherrybrook identified that was an issue, even brought an extra set of gates from outside of their club in, and had the exact same scenario. So we just moved the track, and that fixed their problem. Any more questions or issues or scenarios while we're talking about gates and indicators on the screen here? A common one is what happens when it rains and I'm getting phantom times. Again, phantom times don't have to come from the sun and the arrows. Anything that's blocking the beams or diffusing the beams will potentially give you a phantom time. Question?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah, okay. Just didn't have the mic unmuted. Just coming back to the situation, I noticed when you went back to the gates, you had reception and battery life quite high, I think 98 and 97% respectively. When, just following on from Matt's comment, out at SOPAC and again down at Narrabeen, we were seeing numbers a lot lower than that.
Yeah.
what should we expect to see for the batteries? Obviously is going to drop down, but what reception should we expect to see?
Good question. It depends, again, a lot on your environment, but right now my gates are within a metre and they've got clear line of sight to my antenna, as in they're perpendicular to the gates and the antenna on my hub. So good question. If I've got, say, 10 lanes and I have my antenna from my timing hub at, say, table height, it's sitting on my table, and I've got it lined up in direct line with my 10 lanes, then that's possibly the worst environment to have, and particularly underneath, say, an aluminium shade shelter. That's just compounding things even more again. So you can imagine if you were trying to talk to that 10th gate and you're at the bar, so you've got 10 people deep and everyone's having a conversation, that 10th person has to try and hear you that's bounced through 9 other people before it gets to them. So it's always best to have that antenna offset either towards the start or away from the start, so that that antenna can see each pole that it's trying to talk to. And ideally not underneath my aluminium shade shelter. Obviously keep the laptop there and the timing hub, but use that little extender cable and put it raised now as well. So we're not at chest height, we're now above head height of the gates, which means we're going to be above people as well, which is going to help everything. So all these things, it's hard to say, but I would expect at least, say, 40 would be a low number that I would be looking to see there. Depending on the number of gates I've got lined up as well. But the further they get away, I have had some schools that have set up, they were doing trials that actually took the laptop down to their 100 starts and were keying in who's in what lane, and the times are coming back to them at the 100-meter start. So it depends on how much metal and how many people are around that will affect that reception.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it was, I think if I remember correctly, it was across the board and we were seeing high 40s. So we're still going through, but without having any precedent. Didn't know whether that was good, bad or indifferent. But yeah, so in an ideal setup, what would you expect to see? You know,
my furthest gate in an 8 lane would be, if I had 40 on my outside, I'd be pretty cool with that.
Okay.
Something like that.
All right. Thanks for that.
No worries. Good question, though. More of these sorts of questions. So if you've got any other questions out there, this is what it's about tonight. It's your time. Get all those little ones out.
So when you said offset towards the start, Nick, or offset, so not in direct line with the finish line, but have it offset, how far would you recommend?
The main thing is line of sight with all the Wi-Fi comms. So if that antenna can see it nicely, then that's enough. So whether that's a couple meters either way, or in particular a meter or so plus lifted up onto the above my head height, just means if there's lots of people hanging around because it's all new and standing in the way and looking at the gates, it's like, hang on, those gates are trying to talk to my desk and that's got all these people around it now, so I'm kind of killing the potential here. And the 200 meter, the classic is normally, well, it depends on your setup, but normally there's a big discus cage over near the 200 area with a number of ovals that I've been to. Worst case scenario is that 200 starter is behind that big metal cyclone mesh cage, because then that's any metal structure acts as a bit of a Faraday's cage, like it blocks signals or at least reduces them. So you just got to keep that in mind. Another center had the manual timing stand that they weren't using anymore, this big metal stand that they had dragged away from the finish line to create some space, but they'd put it right between where the 200 and the finish line was. And hey presto, move that out of the way and everything's much happier at that point in time. So it is wireless, things just magically happen, but there are some visual cues there to help you make sure that it's going to happen much better. Any more questions? So what I was about to,
Yeah, Nick, just one other. We seemed to make a real mess of it yesterday by disconnecting the USB hub from the laptop.
Yes.
the cable comes, the little micro USB came unplugged when we were just moving it around.
Yep.
What would be the easiest and the simplest way to recover from that? Like the whole thing just, we basically had to go and reset it up from scratch.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
what's happening there, that timing hub actually has a micro, and that USB is a power supply in there as well. So the laptop's constantly trying to check in with it and get back information. That timing hub has a timestamp for each of your wireless devices, the starters and the gates. So that's what says, right, gate A told me it got a trigger of time X. I know that time X in reality is really 10.5 seconds. And then it tells the laptop lane 1 had 10.5 seconds for that race. So it's the thing that's trying to keep track of all this detail. So if you go and take the power out of it, it does have a bit of a supercapacitor in there to try and help it maintain some stability, but it's not a good thing to go and do. So if you ever do get some really wacky times, like a 48-minute 100-meter race or something like that, you go, right, USB's been disrupted somehow, the computer's done a brownout or something bizarre's happened. Best thing to do, I'll just do it right now if you want, is if we close out of here, I haven't run a race actually, let's do that. Go and run a race. Once it knows that I've ran something, it should give me a different sort of message. It's not doing it. There should be a little, do you want to retry? So anyways, you'd shut the software down, unplug the timing hub, wait a little bit, as in 20 seconds or so. I like to, just to really make sure I'm not going to dig another hole, plug the USB back into a new USB port, so we're kind of giving it all fresh start of things, and then start her up again. As your gates are already on, so I'll just can out, I'll crash out of here. I'm just going to crash the system, so I haven't actually shut the software down. Sorry, I haven't shut the gates down, I've just turned the software off. And starting back up. That means my gate's already on. I'll skip this. So I don't have to press and hold, I just got to give them a little dab. So just a quick dab. If I press and hold, I'm going to turn it off, and then I'll start getting confused. So just a little quick press, and I get them back up. And another quick press. The start device is the only one that's not quite as simple. I have to actually physically turn this one off, which is a bit painful. Wait for the lights to go out. Turn it back on again. And we're back up and running. Go out and run my race. So that's, if you ever get something like that, either go and run a couple test races to get it all kind of synced up and happy again. But if that's not playing ball, then I'd suggest you go and restart the application like what we just did and hook things back up again. So right now we're ready to run a race. I was describing before about if I had rain, then I would hit this ignore button here. So these gates aren't happy, hence I need to give them a service. I'm just going to do this again. I'm trying to get rid of this little message down the bottom here. It's telling me they're trying to sync. I do also have them only 30 centimeters apart, so that may be giving a lot of light bouncing around the area, so they could be getting confused. So this ignore button, see as I press this, the gates go dead. I can also tick that on and it stays on. So if there's lots of rain and I'm getting phantoms because it's just started pouring down, gates again, there's water streaming down over the gates, I can press and hold this and I won't get a time. So just go start a race. Now again, I've got a little mouse over in here. The hotkey to start a race is the control, and the hotkey to finish a race, if I'm doing a pack race, is the shift key. So instead of having to mouse on here, it also tells me up here that that was a manual start because I used the manual start button here. If I hold this ignore button down, I'm trying to get times, but nothing's coming through. which is also handy if we've got a bunch of kids running across the discus. Everyone's yelling, don't run through the gates, but they end up running through there. If you can get to this ignore button in time, then you won't have to start deleting time. As soon as I release it, then we're going to be able to record times. So I've just put 2 times in lane 3, and every other lane has a time. As long as every lane that's set up gets a time, then it will automatically stop 5 seconds after this last time. So right now I've got 2 times in this lane, 1 time and 1 time. I know I've got 2 or at least something because I've got an asterisk on this lane. If I wanted to, I could just leave it and save it as this, and whoever's in this lane 3 will only get that 48.83. That extra time underneath just stays there and gets saved in case I need to refer to it. But that's what it's about, is just the time you see is the one that you save and that you get placed on and your PBs get counted for. Up here is where I key in a number or a name. So I'm just going to put in 1, 2, and if I need to key someone in but they don't have their number, then I can just start typing the name. And once I find the right match for what I'm looking for, just press enter and get a fat texter out if I can and write it on the hand. Oi, you should have had your bib, you're 161, don't forget, catch it later. Here we have the age, here we have the genders, the club. All these columns, you can actually drag them around. If you need to, you've got some big long names or something else, I can change these column headings. So if I don't want to know about club, because they're all the same club at my center, then I can do that. There's other types of things we can turn on here, source and type. So the source, it was from the finish, and type, which lane it came from, these sorts of things. Or just really simplify it. It's up to you what you want to see and how you want to show it. Up here we've got the manual happening still. I still haven't selected.
It doesn't alter the files that get saved, it's just what's visible on the screen. It doesn't modify the file structure.
Yeah, so all that information is static. It's more just what do you want to see.
Yeah, what's visible. Yeah, cool.
At this point in time, I haven't selected an event, but soon as I do, that's when we start to get flags for PVs or records or other things.
Nick, what if that extra time in lane 3 was because the person from the adjacent lane, it's going to be hard for you to show us, I guess, but if you had a 4th lane and it was the person from lane 4 had actually managed to get himself across a lane,
yep.
Are you able to adjust that?
Yeah, let's say it was this person here, didn't actually finish in their lane. So I've just grabbed 48.02 and I'm just going to put it in the bin. Yes. We've now got no time in that. We go, oh, bugger, that's you. You came in second. Guys, did anyone see that was Demo that came in lane 3 after Timothy? Yeah, that was. Okay, cool. Let's go put him in there. So that's all you need to do. Or another scenario while we're talking. Does that help answer that question?
Yeah, perfect, thanks.
And let's another scenario. I'm going to get rid of this. And little Demo was horsing around or was looking for mum and actually tripped and had to crawl across the lines. It didn't even hit that bottom beam. But everyone's watching. We go, all right, I saw Demo came last, sure enough, but maybe by a second or 2. So what do we got here? 48. So I'll make that 50 flat. And now we've got 50 seconds for Demo. That's another one. Another scenario is, not that you ever want it to happen, but let's say it did. Gun went off, kids are running. For whatever reason, the guns died or something's happened and you manually started the race, but you're like, that was around 3 seconds that I need to add to all these times because that's how long it took me to respond to that. I can hit this plus button. I'm going to add, so we've got 46, 50, and 48. I can go, all right, I'm going to add in 3.5 seconds because that's what my gut tells me. And I'm going to add time instead of subtract. And now we've just gone and added these extra times in. So that's just some different functions. Question?
Nick?
Yep.
Sorry. When you put that new time into lane 2, did you right-click in that race time column?
Yeah, good.
Is that how you came up with the enter time?
Yeah, so right-click just now and I can edit this current time.
Great.
Or if there's no time there, then it's 0 and I edit it to be whatever time I want it to be. Some people prefer to have it print in lane, the default is lane order, so I can flip that around. So if you're on the outside of the track and everyone's walking off from lane 8 or lane 10 towards you instead of from lane 1 to lane 10 walking towards you, then if you flip it the other way, when it comes to running a race, I'll just save this. Actually, I'll just go through the setting. Then basically you don't have to have lane 1 curl around and walk back towards you. They can just walk off from lane X towards you and lane 1's the last one off the track, or vice versa. Question?
Yeah, just on that, could you flick back to the previous screen? Just wanted to touch on the way that you're setting it up, and I may have missed it, but just in terms of the way we're going to set it up, the first poll is likely to be, so after that,
Yeah,
just
that's right.
the
Sorry, I was
screen
just
before.
going to turn this on before I saved. So I'm just going to turn on upload when saving data. So that's now turned on. I'm just going to press save. It's going to push up that data for me. All right, so we'll go back to setup screen.
Yeah. So in here, just wanted to clarify so that I've got the understanding is that the start lane, is that what you refer to as the first lane? Like at the moment, you've got start lane 1 there. If you're, circular, we run circular crap, though the 800s that use lane 1 and 2.
Yep.
So although our most inside lane is 3,
yep,
that's what you refer to as start lane. So you'd set that to, for us, we'd set it to 3, and those first 2 would disappear.
correct.
Is that right?
That's it. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, no, I just wanted to clarify. It just comes back to that second screen where, just a slight bit of confusion sometimes where they talk about lane 1, but it's actually lane 3.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's just a matter of getting that clear understanding.
That's it. So that's why we've got this in there now, because some centres like that, they never use physical lane 1 and 2. That's always distance. And their lane 1 is either they refer to it as lane 3 because there's a big 3 written on their track, or they refer to it as...
Yeah, that's right.
So,
No, and the same with those adding. I love the idea of being able to swap numbers around and add 2 minutes and so forth.
Yep.
So really appreciate that.
No worries. Good one.
Thanks.
So we're back to race screen. I've just quickly did it while we're chatting. In case you haven't played much with this, if I go up to settings, oh, by the way, sorry, that's been an hour already. I know this is your time. Are we on the right path? Is everyone comfortable with this sort of content that we're on? And just working through the screens. I've got my little slide pack. But if anyone's concerned that it's been an hour and we haven't even touched on what it is they've come here to talk about, then please sing out now, just so I'm aware that we're using your time effectively.
All good from this bit.
Everyone's good?
Yeah, pretty good.
All right, good. So I'm happy to be here till whenever. You guys tell me when you've had enough or to change subject. So I love this stuff. So hit me with your questions or tell me to move on. So up the top here, I just turned on while I was just asked that question to automatically upload data while saving. And because I've got this hooked up to my demo center, it's now pushing up data to my demo center. I set up a little program. Here's one I prepared earlier. I'm going into the 29th. That's timed out. That's how long it's been. So 29th, come in here with results. Now, because I had some other genders and other ages that I haven't got set up, I've only got 6, 7, 8 set up, male and female, only the under 6er came up here. And that was demo that we'd put in there. Sally Strawberry didn't. So in here, if I wanted to change any other variations, just while I'm in the settings, if we're using any handicap, start line, that's probably something that you guys may want to have a look at tonight and talking through, enabling the start line. And also this automatic sync on startup. But for some of you, the simplest way is obviously to start with the beginning, and that is hit this refresh button. This will populate the center list. So this has all the centers, around 200 odd that are using the system. So just don't have to hunt through there. Just start typing in whatever your name is. You don't have to drag it down. So for me, it's demo. So I'm going to spell it correctly. So I choose my demo center. If I'm using a user profile, which most of you will be these days, we're about to change how that all works in here, so you won't have to tick this box. But that's when you've got to put in your username as well. So maybe it's president_ athletics club A, and then put in your password. But in my case, I've got the boss's signature, so I'm just using demo and password of capital DEMO. So if you ever want to play around, you don't want to make a mess in your own profile, then by all means come and give this a tick. That's a good one to leave on. It clears out all your local data, not your results, just the member information. So nothing to do with all your saved events. That will be there still. And as I hit refresh, it will go and bomb it all out, then rebuild it up for me. And then I'm finished. Other areas in the settings keeps growing as we keep adding more features and requests and so on. There's a number of cool things in here. This is that show tips on startup. So that little helper that walked us through when we very first started, that's where I turn that back on again if I need to. Single lane, that's for pack race if I'm running waves where I've actually got, in one race, I've got a 1K, a 2K and a 3K happening. It will allow me to have those 3 different distances running in that one race, and it will know who's supposed to be saved to which event. If we do need to have some more selectors, age, gender of heat and division, I'll just close out of here. We've now got this heat and division, which is more for your bigger carnival type things or school carnivals if you end up running any of those. So I can turn those off. I prefer it just nice and simple where I don't have heat division. I've just got the distance. Some clubs need to have it reset whenever they go to a new race. So instead of me having to, so I've just ran a race, stop, yeah, delete, yeah, bang, it's back to hundreds. So it makes them find whichever one it is each time. So that's what that one means. Let's go back to general. So again, that's not a very common one, but it's quite handy for those clubs that need it. Show age gender selector. This now means I've got this happening. So as you saw before, it doesn't matter. So I'll just put some numbers in again. So it's just flagging to me that this person that I'm trying to key in doesn't actually match a 6 male. Do you want to put them in? Yes, I do. 17 male. That's why I didn't like it. So that's what this one's about. If you need that sort of control, then turn this on. If I don't want to have that sort of control, then I just leave this off. And it won't keep flagging to me when I'm trying to put in mixed age gender, which is what I prefer because that's all that really matters for me whenever I'm doing school carnivals and so on is what distance. I don't care who's in a lane, what age gender, just put them in, send them down, we'll record them.
If you've got the genders and age group set to mixed and mix, yep. Would it complain like that?
No, so I'll do that now. Mix, and I'll put in 3, and it's happy with that. I'll put in 100. But to save me having that extra noise on the screen, if that's going to be my default, then I'll just turn that off. But up to you how you want to play that one.
Thank you.
No worries. Allow secondary race. So this is what we were describing earlier. Where I've got one clock here, and then we've got another one running. So this allows me to run overlapping races. So I'm going to start this race 5 seconds later, because that's the default. Again, we can change that up here. So instead of it being seconds, wait, oh no, so that's the other one. Down here, initial ignore period in seconds, we could make that all the way up to 60. So if you've got a small track where you're running a 300 meter and you're running a 400 meter race on that 300 meter track, then you may want to have the dead time of 20 seconds so that the kids get to do their first 100, then clear the gates before the gates become live. Otherwise, you could just hold the ignore button down if you needed to, and you wouldn't get times. So one race is happening. Meanwhile, we want to start our next race up here. I'm still keying in who's who, or we've done a start line when they come through. Meanwhile, the race in the background's happening. I stop or save this. I'll save, that's uploading, and there's my 3 times are waiting for me. Go and start my next race, and so on. So we can just keep overlapping. So obviously it gets kind of busy, but it just depends on how it is that you're running your races and what you're trying to do and whether that's an issue or not.
So one of the things that we're toying with, I guess, is scanning the bibs at the start of the race to get them in the lane. I guess if you're going to run overlapping races, that would be a good practice in particular, would it?
Yep, so we'll jump into that now. So we're talking about start line, where we've got a separate device, whether it's a phone or a tablet or a laptop with internet at it, as well as I do at the finish line here. So I've just come in to set up profile details, and that's brought up this screen. Here's the pin. I'm just going to copy that. I'm going to go to mobile login. So now, even though you're looking at my screen and it's one computer, this could be on a tablet somewhere else. I'm just going to find my demo center, put my pin in, go enter. I'm going to go to run. I'm going to choose start line. It's going to be my front straight. If you're not sure what I mean by which location in settings here, here's the default. So this is built to handle if you're running a multi-track setup, as in I've got multiple timing gates around the place, and I've got a front straight, a back straight, and 2 other ones happening, then you've got 4 locations. So make sure that whoever you're partnering up with, they know which one you are, otherwise they're keying in who's who into the wrong finish line, if that makes sense. So no times on the screen here. We'll do a bit of screen minimizing and just get things on the screen so we can see it all happening in real time. Okay, so current race, race 6. If I'm not sure, just hit the refresh. If I change the distance, so we're going to make this a 400 meter, give it a second, that will start coming through. It refreshes every 5 to 8 seconds or so. There we go, they're now 400s. If I come in here and I do 23, 45 and 67, and then when I press save, shortly after, we'll see them on the screen here. Then when I run my race, so there's a little tick here that says that that one's done. I could go and load my next one up. So I'll make this one 1, 2, 3, simplicity, and go save. Oh, before I press save, we'll start this race. Sorry, that was the one I just done before. So let's go start this race. So I've started it. I haven't pressed save yet on this race, but I'm going to press save now. Those names are going to come through in a sec. We're now up to the next race here, because that's already refreshed to race 7 and race 7. I'm going to go into race 8 and put in 7, 6, 5 and save. We're going to get some times coming through here. And I'm going to press, it's going to stop automatically for me. Start that next race. We're happy with what we're seeing. We press save. It's going to upload. Those kids that come through here now, times on the screen, and so on. And we just keep wrapping ourselves. So the biggest challenge you can have with this is that whoever's down at the start line, doesn't press this refresh often enough and keys into the wrong race. So if they get out of step by a race and they're not sure what they're doing, they always think that the top one is the first race and the bottom one is the race that's lined up after it, then you're going to be in a bit of the hurt locker. So make sure that they read that this is current race, the one that's on the line, the first one they're trying to key in. and the one behind them, next race, is actually the one lined up, ready to go after the current crew that are on the line. So as long as they're familiar with that and they keep hitting refresh, then generally that works a treat. I love running school carnivals with that because my job becomes a hell of a lot easier. I just sit back and keep pressing stop if I need to, if it's not a complete set, and then pressing save from there. Does that help understand what that's all about? If you want to have a play with that, then that's all good. You could even be doing some lanes for me tonight if you wanted to jump into Demo Center, and you could be loading me up. That's the other cool part when we do testing for this sort of stuff. I could be doing it here, and Chris is helping me in Perth, and he's loading up my lanes for me over in Perth when I'm here in Castlemaine. Any questions about start line?
So that's using the RaceHQ software, Nick. Is that correct?
Yeah, so that's web platform, so web app.
Yep.
So it
Yep.
has to have internet at that end, plus my finish line needs to have internet and this enable start line process ticked on.
Right. Okay.
So worth a play, and a good.
And we've got access to that.
Yeah, that's everyone has that. So
That's everyone.
yeah.
Okay. All right, that's cool. One of the other things I heard you mention earlier was to have a laptop running just the timing, and then another one doing the results entry.
That's it. So
is that using a similar function rather than start line process? It's just running the race, capturing the times. Because one of the biggest things we want to be trying to do this year is to speed up our races. So instead of us playing around at the finish line, so we're exploring the start line entry. So very interested in that, and I think we'll have a crack at that now that we know a little bit more about it. But also, if we continue doing it at the finish line, how do we
speed that up?
Speed that up so it frees up the timing computer just to do timing, and then there's potentially another PC that's there just doing the data entry.
So what I'm about to do, we've got our timing app open. So this is computer A. I'm about to make computer B on the same computer, but the logic's the same as what we're doing here. So I've just started up another instance of the software. It won't be able to find the timing hub. I won't be able to hook up the timing gates as such because that, see up here, I've got a red dongle telling me it couldn't find it because it's already spoken for. So I go to saved events. From here, I hit the ... and I go and find via my magical network, which will be the local computer in this case, but in your environment will be via a crossover or a wireless or something. Go to documents, results HQ. In my case, I'm using the demo profile, so it'd be your center name. Go to the correct season, come in here to pack, go to the date, which is 29th the 8th, and hook into this. This has now the last lot of races that I've just saved and ran. So I'm just going to squash this up a bit, put it over here. So this is computer B, this is computer A. Computer A is just about to run another race. Wait for the times to be available. No one's keyed in here. I'm going to press stop and press save. Come across here, you may notice there's a little file update little window that's just kind of popped up and disappeared. I just made this a bit bigger. I hit the up arrow. There's my times. I go and put in who's who, and then I go and hit upload. And if it's able to, it will. Meanwhile, starting my next race, that tells me who was actually able to be uploaded based on the age gender combination that I'm just trying to push up. As well as here, it tells me if I've got an upload success or not with the red line through it. Stop, or it will stop for me. Press save. Here's my little upload file change indicator. Then I go and hit my up arrow, and there's my next one.
Yeah, cool.
So that's just using saved events. Any other questions? Okay, some other, yep. If I wanted to go to saved events because someone's come up to me and said, oh, I need to see what the time was on that last race, all I need to do is just hit this little saved events icon. It opens up. It knows where it is. It's already got the right date. There's a number of different reports you've got here, but here's my last race. Come in here and that's the information I got. I go and edit things if I want. I'll put it in the bin. We'll go about keying in some names and re-uploading if I want to, or just get out of there. Now, I've just noticed I've been doing all manual starts. I'm just going to do a wireless start. See up here now we've got an E instead of an M. So that's told me that this race was an electronic start instead of a manual like I've been doing up till now. And now I'm going to get some times. If there's a rerun due to, I'm a bit late now, got all times. So classic is, what do you do when it's a false start? I'll just save this race. If it's a false start, gun goes off, and you hear the double bang, and you have a bit of a look, and you go, oh, right, kids are turned around. That was a false start. You can use this button here. The benefit of using rerun, particularly if you're using the start line process, notice we're up to race 12. If I hit rerun, I'm now back at race 12. So if they were using the iPad or something down at the start line, I've still got all the appropriate athletes on my line. That's right, in my lanes. It also saves you a couple clicks versus if I do, and by a couple clicks I mean mouse clicks. If I do stop, are you sure? Yes. And then I have to go delete because, or save, either way I don't have an option but to move forward. So at race 12, we'll go delete. We're now up to race 13. So if we were using the start line, whoever they had keyed in the iPad, we've now given them a headache because they have to go and re-key race 13. Or their race 13 kids already on the screen here, and we have to start keying over them with the new race 12 names into race 13, and then they have to blah, 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 blah. So that's what rerun is very handy for. Another one that we haven't talked about yet is, if we come up here to general, and we come down here to, if we're going to use Meet Manager, this is the option we use. I'll just turn it on and we'll give you a quick view on that one. So it needs to go and find a file. And in this case, it already had one. I'm not sure where I saved it, but it seems, where did I put that last time? I think I put it in Karingai's one. There we go. Happy days. So that has now given me who's in what lane based on what Meet Manager is expecting for this race. So it's just told me that it's boys 800 meter run, heat 1. So let's go find a more relevant 100 meters. There we go. So 8 girls, 100 meters, heat 1 is what I'm seeing there. Event number 17 for the day. Then as we run a race and we get times, if you're using a virtual thing like SugarSync or Dropbox, every time we press save now, so we go stop. This one here is just bogus because obviously they didn't actually expect anyone in lane 1, so I'll just go and get rid of those. I'm just on default hitting all my lanes. So to save Meet Manager having any issues, we'll just keep it clean for what it's expecting. When I press save now, that's going to create a little file, and you can see it's rolled onto the next event already for me. It's created a little file that Meet Manager will then identify as a results file, and we'll suck in those lane time places that it was expecting for that race. So if you're running some sort of big carnival, then that can be really handy if you need to use Meet Manager. If you wanted to use our version of that one, as in use RaceHQ with all your lane draws and setup and so on, then untick Meet Manager and turn on Race Lane List. So this just relies on being able to talk to your RaceHQ profile. So I'm just going to go and hit sync. So it's going to bring down the 18 events. Go yes please. So you do this at the start of the day or whenever you needed to get a fresh list of whatever's changed. So instead of needing a network between laptops, it's just between this laptop and the internet. It's now brought up everything that we've got going on. It's even told me which combination of things in theory we've already got some events for because we've been playing around. But I'm going to go to this one. This is now brought down 6 male. There's 2 members, and I'm going to go up and we're going to have a look at this lineup in RaceHQ. So I'm just going to back all the way out into RaceHQ land. So up here we can set up race lanes. So I've gone into my calendar. Here's the 29th. This is the default matrix view, but I'm just going to click on list. And here's all these little green tabs here are where I've got my different events. So I think we had a 6 male 400, is that what we had dialed up? So here's the 2 different races that it's built out for me earlier. 6 male 200, so Vesh and Liam. Vesh and Liam. That's them there. So that's how it's brought it down. I can then go and run a race. I'll turn my lanes around. I want 1 to 2. Then it's going to go and upload this information. If we're doing heats to finals and that sort of thing, then it knows who's in which lane and which heat they're a part of, and use the IAAF logic will then allow it to progress through to the final. Go yes, and save. Boop, uploaded. Then it's rolled on to the next event, ready for me to go. Questions? So nearly up to an hour and a half now. We've gone through some pretty cool bits and pieces. There's still a few other cool things in here, but just want to make sure everyone's still comfortable. Just turn that back off. In here, we've got the initial setup, the ignore period that we described earlier. Your start device microphone sensitivity. So if that's set to high, that means it's more sensitive. So it takes less noise or less impact to get it to start. So if you find you've got a bad set of caps that are a bit soft, aren't giving you the same bang, or your start gun's getting softer, the spring or the hammer anvil mechanism is getting softer, and you're getting some...
That never happens.
No, not these days. Then this is where you can adjust the sensitivity of your start device. So the microphone internal to that device on the end of your cap gun. If you want to change the sounds on your laptop, or if you're using the e-gun option, using the start device as an e-gun, you can change it from beep to bang. Then here's some other notification warning bits as well. In the printing area, if you need to print things, people say, what printer do we need? It's like, whichever printer you're happy to use. It will use an A4. The general one that people like using is an 80mm thermal printer. So if I've got that connected to my laptop, then I'll just find it out of my options of printers. But I'll just use Snagit so you can see what we're actually talking about here. So this means as I press save, I'll get a summary ticket. And as I key in an athlete's number, it will give me an individual's ticket as I go. If I want 1 copy, 2, 3, 4, 5, so some big carnivals that need multiple copies for different reasons. If I'm doing cross-country style, then it can print a little A5 certificate with whatever information you need on there, and you can adjust the margins if you need to push it around because your print is a bit different to what it was expecting. But just the general one is this here. So I'm just going to run a race. I'll get some times, and I'll just show you what those different tickets are about and what they look like. So, because I've already got these on the screen, it's not going to throw an individual ticket. But if I come in here and just ask it to do that again, my little, I can't use that because that's what's doing my screen recording. It would show me a ticket with a time and a name and a place on there. So I better turn that off because it may start giving my computer a migraine. So I'll turn that, snag it off, and I'll just do PDF. It's probably a safer alternative right now. So that's going to load up my PDF. I'll just give it a quick save. Test 1. I didn't even pay attention. There we go. There's test 1. So that's what the individual would get. There's a PB star, who they are, their name, the distance, the time. It was an electronic race, that one. Place, age, gender, place, and so on. Time, location, blah, blah, blah. So that's the main ticket. Once I press save, it then will produce a full summary ticket. So test 2. Thank you, Mr. PDF. So here's everyone that happened in this race, all their information. They all got PBs, and there's their name, age, gender, and so on from there. So that's the difference between those tickets. Other options up here in the peripherals. If I need to add an extra event, I can come and find it in here. Alternatively, if it's not in my drop-down list, hit the Edit Events. That will open up the settings and open up the event tab and allow me to expand out whatever it is I need to add in. So we're going to do 70 meter, 75 meter. That will now be in my list, so I can go and use that. Other things up here, my members. This lets me go and see who's who. I can click on these to sort them around based on whatever it is I need to try and help identify things by. Waves, that's a separate one if you're looking to do waves and handicaps and so on. Peripherals, if you're hooking up any RFID scanners or anything else like that, then this is where you can go and turn all that stuff on or hook it up. And records, this is where all your age, gender, event records live if you need to reference it. But saying that, if we've got a race in here, click for current records. This is telling me there isn't any records for this combination. Let's see if there's any 100 meters. There we go. That's just told me all the relevant records based on the age genders that it knows about for this race. So as long as you've got a matching record in your records area and it knows which age gender it is you're working with, it will try and help you out and give you those, so you don't have to go and hunt off through here and find out who's who in the record land. If you ever need a hand with things, this help icon here will open up the help forum. And this is where you've got all your different content and video and so on like that. This start line one, this is the cool one that I really like for handicaps and that sort of thing. So choose an age, gender, event. Here's everyone. They're all off 0 because I haven't got any handicaps set up. But in theory, if cap test is off 0, then they would be off first, and then the next kid was off at 30 seconds, then we'd have a little clock counting down from 30 down, and then this would be counting its way up to 30 seconds, and then it would kick them off. Beep, 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 off they go. And you'll notice that it also starts this clock in the background. So you can have this application on a separate computer over yonder doing your starts for your different race that needs this. And as long as it's got a timing hub and this laptop here has a timing hub and you've hooked them up, then they will talk across that and hook you up with the start whenever they start things over there. And then we go and get some times. Now another really cool little thing that's handy if you're not aware of the start device, right now it's blinking. My start device is blinking at me because there's a race in progress. This here is telling me that I need to save or delete a race, so I haven't actually finished. The moment I press save or delete, or at least within 5 seconds, that light on that start device, no, I've still got that turned on. I'll turn my printing off. Will go solid, which then tells the starter, race is in their hands, ready when you are. However, this little one here, if we've got a hold up for whatever reason at the finish line, I need to go do a wee, or someone's throwing up, or whatever it is, I need to change some batteries or something. By ticking that, my start device is now blinking, and you've got this visual cue as well that something's on hold happening here. We're finished doing whatever it is, go and untick that, and now my start device has gone solid, so is my indicator on the screen, and we're ready to kick on. So it's just a good way to give you a bit of space to sort out whatever it is, and the starter, providing they're paying attention to their LED indicator on their device, then they'll be able to keep up to speed with what you need them to do. Questions? None. That's great. That one there here, member status, this is more for if you are looking to do a pack race and you want to know who's actually crossed the finish line and who hasn't, then this lets you keep track of these people and what they're up to. So that's, again, this is more for your cross country, or that's built in for triathlon and multi-sport events that they use this for as well. But that's what that's about. One thing they haven't actually talked about, on the screen here, we're going to put some athletes in, get some times. The status, the default is okay. You can see that popping up. If we're talking about a walk, not all the time, but unluckily for some kids, they need to get a DQ, then we go and make them a DQ. And if I go and press save, 100 meters, Sally Strawberry, up here in Results HQ, go to home, come on down to the 29th, we go to hundreds, and 6 female. Here we go, she's got a time, but she's got a DQ status has come through. So that's what you can do in that status column when there's an athlete in there and a time. Any questions? How about I ask you some questions? Somebody tell me how I know what my battery level is in my start device.
Yeah, hover over the start device indicator.
Oh, if I had a jelly bean, I'd throw it to you right now. Good work. So there we go. All these bits and pieces, as mentioned before, they're not super live, as in my battery and my reception will move around a little bit. It's not hooked in live. So the way the gates save power is the comms chip, the communication chip, is turned off within the gate via the micro, which stays on, along with the LEDs, so the little trigger mechanisms, they stay on. But it wakes that micro, so the micro wakes the chip up every 10 seconds, unless there's a time that comes in. So the battery and the reception is only from when it last checked in, and the battery only gets checked on every minute, and reception I think every 30 seconds if it hasn't had a trigger before that. So things aren't really live and dynamic is probably a better word to say there. It is, however, quite dynamic when it comes to blocking a beam and things getting out of alignment, like what I've just done now. And the moment I move my hand away, boom, then it clears up. Because while it's in that state, it's staying awake and saying, no, 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 not happy, not happy. And then when it's happy, it tells the laptop, and then it shuts it down and goes back to normal race mode. Who can tell me what you would do if you unplugged the USB timing hub right now accidentally?
Scream loudly.
That helps for some things, but not all things.
I'd shut it down and then start again.
So just shut the app down.
Yep.
So a good one to do, as mentioned before as well, is also unplug the timing hub. So we're kind of totally killing the power supply to the hub and plug it back into a new USB. So it's really kind of giving it a full chance to go to ground zero and start again. Now, if we did do that, do the timing gates need to be turned back on? How do we manage the timing gates at that point in time?
No, they'll still be on. It'll be just a short press on them to re-register them.
That's it.
So you don't need to turn them off with a long press, just a short press on each one, but you go through that setup process again.
That's it. What would happen right now if we wanted to go and run some 800s? How would I get out of sprint mode and go do some 800s?
Just select the event in the drop down there, wouldn't you?
Good question. So let's do that. I'll say 1500. Or if I wanted to add an 800, how would I get 800 into my list?
Oh, I think you do that.
Your little
I'd
call.
go edit events.
Go to your setup, yeah.
Edit events.
Yeah.
And we'll go and find, this would be the next challenge, in distance. And where's my 800?
Oh, go on, make it a mile. Go on, make it a mile.
Is it 4-minute mile? Wasn't that Landy and the guys? Maybe it's not in distance. Should be there, I thought. I couldn't see it. Maybe I'm just getting a bit cross-eyed. 800.
You're 828cc.
There we go. There she is. Okay, so we've got 800s in there. So if we're using these 3 gates to run an 800 meter, what's going to happen in our current mode that we're in?
An 800 is non-gated. We need to get into non-gated mode.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yep, so into pack mode. So let's say we had 3 lanes set up in our current mode, even though we've got the right distance. I'm just going to run it just to explain it better. Race is running. I've got my 3 lanes set up. I've got 30 kids on the track. All these kids are running through lane 1 and 2, but I can only save this top time. That's the only time. So I'm only going to get my first and second place in lane 1 and 2. So we kind of stuff that race basically if we didn't have a backup timer, because I could only save 2 times. However, if we get out of sprint mode, so we go back to setup, and I'm going to go into pack. Used to be called non-gated. And I'm going to turn on my 3 lanes. Boom, they're there already. That's great. Now we get a different environment. These are a little different. They're not so much about the lane that they're up to. I'm going to start a race. I'm going to wait. Then we get to see how the gates act as a multi-timer. See here, that was all lane 1 down the side here. It's all lane 2. And now I'm just going to start swinging my arms randomly through different gates. And meanwhile, someone else is pressing the trigger button on the start device. I'll just scroll down so you can see what's happening down there. Starter, 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 starter. Just started my next race as well. This one's finally finished. I've got 21 athletes. Stopping this race. So we start keying. So I don't actually have to stop the race before I start keying in. I just did that out of sequence. So you could have the race running still. Meanwhile, this next race in the background, I'm happy with what I've got here. So I'm just going to press save when I'm ready. It won't be able to find a matching event, I don't think. So it's going to think for a little bit and then it'll clear that screen out. and we'll start to get some times in the background from lane 1 and 2, and so on. So that's how we'd run an 800 meter if we wanted to use the gates. Who can tell me a challenge with using the gates in a pack race?
Trying to line them up at the end to figure out who's first, second.
That too, if it is a close finish, you've still got to manually place who created those relevant times.
Yeah, just getting the gates wide enough so you don't get two athletes crossing the finish line at the same time.
That's it. So if some people tend to want to make their gates wider to allow more room for the kids to run through, which is kind of makes sense. But it also means that someone's got a loud radio or TV on in the background there. Do you mind turning your mic off, whoever that is? That's better, thank you. So if we do have the lanes wide enough for 2 or more kids to run through, then it means if they happen to run through shoulder to shoulder, the gates will only pick up 1 time. So you end up having to go quite manual anyways. So some people really love the idea and the concepts, and then they start playing with it and they go, you know what? Because we have lots of really competitive athletes and I still get lumps of kids finishing, I'm better off still using my manual timing, as in using the trigger button here and getting the kids through that way instead of having the gates set up. And it means then you've got less gates required, or you can use your gates on other things instead of at your finish line.
Good. Mark here. I just sorry about the TV.
Right.
The just on that, and something haven't considered, but I'm pretty keen to look at, is potentially you can put those gates effectively a shoulder width apart, and it will record finisher 1 and finisher 2 if they're right behind one another.
Correct. If finisher 1 and 2 are we talking about running through the same
Go.
lane or next to each other?
Yeah, in the same lane.
0.2 difference. There's a point, so 200 milliseconds is the minimum gap that it will allow to come through. We used to have it less, as in 0.1, no, 0.01 I think it was. But then we had issues with people's trailing foot with a big kind of heel kick towards the bum was causing a second time in lane. So there's lots of extra times on the screen that were only 0.01 or 2 behind the actual athlete's time. So as long as they've got that big enough gap, which at a 400 meter pace is probably like 30 centimeters between athlete 1 finishing and athlete 2, then you should still be able to get clean indicators between them.
Okay. No, it says, look, I'll talk to the guys, but something that I personally like to pursue, because you can basically narrow the gap between the gates.
That's it. Just make sure they're not getting too lactic and dizzy and trying to dive through and start tackling your lanes. Oh, but I was going to beat him. Yeah, well, you just broke a gate.
It would only be an issue if they're going to trail each other through the same gate. But if they're only shoulder width apart and the athletes go through between the 2 gates, so between like what you've got here, Nick, between 1 and 2 at the same time, and it's going to record right down to the 100th.
That's it.
Isn't it?
So I'll do that now.
Correct, yeah.
On the swing.
Yeah, but if they trail each other between there, you've got 200 millisecond gap required.
But yeah. I think we're on the same track there, mate.
Yeah.
Definitely. So yeah, have a play around with it, but just be wary that it's not feet on the desk and read a book. You still got to keep track of who's finished and which order they came home in. But hopefully the timing is at least an electronic start and electronic finish for you.
All right, thanks for that.
No worries. In this screen, we've got an add time button. So that's just giving me 60 seconds. Because it's manual and maybe I didn't press the button quick enough or my gate didn't pick up someone, you can't right click and add a time, but you hit this add time button up here. Oh, there's another one that I can show you as well. If you click on this is more for your distance races. If you need to get it to start from a particular time because you're at a cross-country environment and someone had called in that the race started at 7 a.m. and it's not sheep stations because it's more about the course and places, then you could dial up the actual time that you're up to. You go over the mobile phone. All right, so that was 8 minutes 20 seconds ago. Okay, I'll put 8:20 on the clock here. And they're a couple K away at the start line. Yeah, all right, cool. And starting, no worries. Then everyone that comes through from that point on will be getting all relative to the time that it was when the race was started. There's a few little tips like that. And if you really want to freak the system out, you come in here and you can right click on trigger and you can go and give it a bunch of times. So that's a good way to test stuff. If you really want to freak it out, I won't do it. You can add 1,000 triggers and see how good your computer is at processing all that. If I want to get rid of a person in this screen, then I can click on their time and drag it off and it'll shuffle everyone up, or click on their reference number out to the side and drag that off. Questions? So it's coming up to 1:45 now. How does everybody feel about, so the biggest thing I wanted to give everyone out of here is obviously some just knowledge on the different features and functions, but more so when shit doesn't go well, when you're in the hot seat and something's gone funny, you've got some confidence and some tools to try and get things back on track as quick as you can, because that's the part that is, I've been there, it's not fun. And normally it's something quick and simple that will help get you out of trouble, versus if you go down the other path, you can blow out time quickly without really wanting to, and then that stress just mounts up and then it becomes not fun at all. So is there anything else we can go through that's going to help you with those tools and at least better understand the software and the application in itself?
I have to say, Nick, you've done a great job. I think from my perspective, I'm going to bow out. I think what needs to happen from here for me is to actually get hands onto the software and start using it. I wasn't able to make it down to Narrabeen the other day when they were playing with it. Yep. So my next step will be to do that. I think we've got a lot of stuff to go with here, and there's a few people on the call that are familiar with the software. They probably got a bit more out of it, which is great. It's not that I didn't get anything out of it. I got a lot out of it. It was wonderful.
Yeah, great. Well, like what I'm doing right now, just take a couple gates home if you're able to, and just do what I'm doing right now. I'm in the shed, got 3 lanes set up, and I'm just tinkering and just trying to break it and understand it and get out of a situation or create a cool scenario that I've been thinking about. So you don't have to book up time for 8 people to go down to the track and it's cold and it's wet and it's windy and no one's got time to be there. Just grab a cup of tea or a bourbon or whatever your flavor is and just set some lanes up at home and just play before you get in the hot seat where you've got a few hundred kids or 1,000 kids hanging around and all the pressure of the world on you. That's the biggest bit of advice I can possibly give you, I think.
I'll have to beg nicely to Matthew to lend me a couple of gates.
They're at the track, mate. You can go help yourself.
One thing that I haven't actually quickly talked about, this version down the bottom, when there's an update, there will be a little number on there. Because we still haven't made this the public access version, even though you can get it from the help forum, this won't let you know if there's a new version of the 3 series. It's just focusing on the 2, which is sitting dormant as far as development's concerned. But once this is full public live, if there's a new version, then you'll be able to click on this. This is trying to take me back to 2 land, which is what I don't want, but it'll let you download it and then restart the application and you'd be up on the new version using that process.
So can I update ours to version 3?
Yeah, absolutely. So all you need to do, if you're running the 2 series, it's got the same question mark. So just click on that.
Ah, yeah.
And then scroll down, down, down. New 3 series, overview and download. Here's a little video, basically a quick version of what we've done tonight. And here's the latest one that I'm playing with at the moment. It's updated on the 26th of the 8th, and just click and download there.
Great, thanks.
No worries.
I think I'll go too, and I might join in later in the month.
So everyone's comfortable with me uploading this to YouTube, and it's a public reference. There's no issues with that?
No problem at all.
That's fine.
Yeah,
That's
happy
fine.
here.
No problem at all.
Great. Well,
Just a quick one before you disappear. How long's that little video that you've got?
that one, let's have a look. I think it was 14,
Just trying
maybe 4 minutes or 14. Where am I going? Get out of here, Nick.
That's all right. Yeah.
Let's have a quick, it should have a little scan over value on there, I think. 14 minutes, there we go.
We're just going to have a quick...
Okay, yeah, 14. Yeah. Probably a bit long to show for the amateur,
Yeah.
but okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I,
But no, that's fine.
Okay.
Look, really appreciate everything you've shown us this
no
evening.
worries, guys.
I think I've got a bit out of it. I think the rest of the guys have too.
Great. Well, thanks for your time, everyone. I know we didn't follow the slide pack, and I was hoping we wouldn't, that we'd just stay in the virtual world. But as you always know, we're around, and by all means, email, call us, text us, whatever, if you've got any questions, and by all means, we're here to help, and we want to make sure you have a great season. So we'll do whatever we can to make that the case.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Thanks, Nick.
No worries, guys. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks,
Thanks
Nick.
for your time. Bye.
See you later.
Thanks. Cheers.